This morning I'd like to go further into the Grenville Lodge Enigma and a certain secret intelligence network called Department S-34, who call themselves the Monks of Mendicant Hall and are resident at Grenville Lodge. Indeed, Department S-34 were formed in 1946 by a network of Office of Strategic Services operatives, i.e. American intelligence agents, and MI5 and MI6 operatives who were unhappy with the state of the service and wanted to form their own network. Indeed, this network is mainly Anglo-American, i.e. British and American spooks. However, there are German overseers of the network, and indeed, due to the cross-pollination of the Anglo-American intelligence services and the Nazi intelligence services at the end of the Second World War, in 1946, when Department S-34 was formed, there were many Nazi intelligence operatives in the network and continue to be till this day. Indeed, Department S-34 formed the nucleus of the networks that were carrying out human experiments at Grenville Lodge, such as the human experiment that I was subjected to. Indeed, a lot of the experimentation I was subjected to had to do with the testing of synthetic drugs, and in an attempt to enhance my abilities as a paranoid schizophrenic super spy, as part of the Mindgate program's Project Aniseed. So it's interesting to note that I was supplied with synthetic narcotics by this department, Department S-34, who also term themselves the Monks of Mendicant Hall, though I expect this terminology, the Monks of Mendicant Hall, is kind of an in-joke within Department S-34, as they are a very serious organization. And indeed, I was also being supplied synthetic narcotics in my own time when I was not being tested on. Indeed, the vacuum that opened up the supply of synthetic narcotics were connected to Department S-34, who had an agenda to see me basically go crazy, to analyze my schizotypy, and also to attempt to cast me as a lunatic if I was to expose the Grenville Lodge Enigma, which I began to do not long after the testing began. I began to realize that something strange was going on at Grenville Lodge, and I began to expose it fairly early on. Indeed, I believe the testing of me began in June 2012. Indeed, I was at Grenville Lodge from then until March 2013. And for a lot of the time, I was mixing in a glass bong synthetic cannabinoids and a strain of synthetic crack, and I was taking at least 30 bong hits of this substance a day, so I was incredibly strange indeed. The other students began to avoid me because they believed my personality was beginning to transplant. And indeed, it was. But I don't necessarily believe this was a bad thing, because before Grenville Lodge, I was a moron. A typical moron created by British culture in the 21st century, so I'm actually rather grateful for my dodgy experiences at Grenville Lodge, despite the fact that I want to expose the Grenville Lodge network. I am grateful for the personality transplant that I underwent due to synthetic narcotics while at the institution of Grenville Lodge, so it's still very interesting to consider indeed. Department S-34 were running the mind control testing at the Grenville Lodge facility during the years 2012 to 2013 indeed. There were guests to the program, such as Sir John Sawers, the Director General of MI6, who was not actually within the Department S-34 network. However, he was observing the Department S-34's network operations at Grenville Lodge, as a lot of the Department S-34 operations came under the overarching MI6 Mindgate program. And therefore, Sir John Sawers had an interest in what was going on at Grenville Lodge, and indeed I also encountered Sir Robert Gascoigne Cecil, who was utilizing the codename Mark Hodge at the time. Indeed, Sir John Sawers was utilizing the codename James A. Pritchard, and Robert Gascoigne Cecil was utilizing the codename Mark Hodge. And I encountered these individuals during my time at Grenville Lodge. Indeed, a lot of the testing went on in the catacombs beneath Grenville Lodge. However, after I exposed Grenville Lodge, I was given amnesiac barriers by Masonic lobotomists who semi-lobotomized me on the authority of the Vice-Chancellor of the Grenville Lodge Institute at the time, Sir Julian Lovelock. Indeed, Julian Lovelock had originally planned to murder me. However, his assistant, Professor John Drew, who had a liking for me, believed that amnesiac barriers were the best way to conceal the operations of Department S-34 at the Grenville Lodge Institute. So it's all very interesting to consider. So since the Grenville Lodge Institute, I have been wandering around under complete observation from Department S-34. While I was in Russia, Serbia, Romania, Moldova, and Macedonia, I was under complete observation from spooks of Department S-34, who often utilize proxies for surveillance, such as mobsters, local criminals, and police informants. So it's all very interesting to note that I was most probably being photographed the entire time I was wandering around in Eastern Europe. And indeed, it was my exposures of Department S-34's operations at Grenville Lodge, although at the time I was not aware of the name Department S-34. It was my exposures of this network that led to the death of Kati in Vladikavkaz at the hands of System, i.e. a Russian neo-Nazi Satanist group, who were proxies of Department S-34 and also had ties to the Paracelsus group, who are themselves interconnected with Department S-34 due to Masonic tradition. So it's all very interesting to note how all of this works out. Indeed, I'm pretty sure that the Grenville Lodge Institute is haunted. Indeed, at my halls of residence initially, where the testing began in June 2021, I observed several apparitions at Hailsham House, my lodgings at the time, the halls of residence. And indeed, I also took note of the fact that there were these two cats who were fed by the housekeepers, and indeed these two cats seemed like there was something wrong with them. Indeed, they seemed like they were severely mentally disturbed, but had also been dosed on some sort of hardcore antipsychotics such as extreme levels of thorazine. Indeed, this is where the schizophrenic cats on thorazine theory that I have delineated began. And indeed, two students from that halls of residence, Hailsham House, had died in the past 7 years under mysterious circumstances. And indeed, I viewed a homemade video of one of the students who seemed very psychotic and ran into a closet screaming. And there was an apparition in the background that he seemed to be running from. Indeed, I further theorized that these two students had found out about the operations of Department S-34 at Grenville Lodge and had subsequently been murdered by the professors at Grenville Lodge, and their souls were transplanted into the cats. So it's all very strange to consider these cats seem to have been the vessels by which the souls of these two psychotic students had been transplanted and transferred into. So it's all very strange to consider. This is the Grenville Lodge Enigma, and this is what I'm going to spend the rest of this channel trying to solve, along with leaking information about the Roundway experiment. These are going to be my two focuses: the Grenville Lodge Enigma and the Roundway experiment. Indeed, after I had left Grenville Lodge and wandered around in Eastern Europe, perhaps at times operating for the GRU, as the GRU had tricked me that they were in a conflict with Grenville Lodge, when in fact the Grenville Lodge network, Department S-34, utilized GRU networks for operations at times. However, the GRU emissaries had basically tricked me that they would help me in my overall exposures of Grenville Lodge and would conduct operations against Grenville Lodge. However, this was all a trick that led to me assassinating 2 Chechens and 15 Azeris with kitchen utensils. Indeed, the first one of the 2 Chechens was a double murder, and the other 15 were single murders. Indeed, I was then placed in a psychiatric facility, i.e. psychiatric facility number 74 on the outskirts of Voronezh, and was further tested on, utilizing synthetic drug narco-hypnosis and radiation and psychotronic weapons to attempt to enhance my skills as a schizophrenic super spy for eventually putting back into the West, whereby my brainwaves would operate as a receiver for the GRU, attempting to harness information on Wiltshire for their operations, which they had originally convinced me were against Grenville Lodge. However, I'm not sure this is the case, and indeed, when I returned to the United Kingdom, I began to work out that something very strange had occurred at Grenville Lodge, and indeed my amnesiac barriers were beginning to break down. Hence why the Department S-34 networks contracted the Roundway experiment operatives to brainwash me in a certain way, whereby I would become a utilizable psychic spy for Department S-34, i.e. a Gladio operative. Indeed, I was programmed as a Nazi spy to operate with my brainwaves wired up not only to the Russian GRU, but also to this secret British intelligence network, i.e. Department S-34, who seem to have a lot of links to the high-ranking Royal Arch Freemasons of the Hellfire Club. It's interesting to consider that the Vice-Chancellor of the Grenville Lodge Institute, Julian Lovelock, who was a Department S-34 operative, was also a Hellfire Club initiate and a 33rd degree Royal Arch Freemason. So it's all very interesting to note the intersecting networks at play here, and indeed, this Department S-34 is a highly secretive intelligence organization, and Grenville Lodge is a front for the operations of Department S-34, who are well concealed within the cryptocracy, even from MI5 and MI6 themselves. Indeed, the majority of lower level MI5 and MI6 operatives do not even know of the existence of Department S-34. And if they become aware of it, they are usually lobotomized and placed in a psychiatric hospital. So it's actually very dangerous to talk about Department S-34, because this is a highly concealed intelligence network within the wider British intelligence community. Indeed, as I stated, Department S-34 consists of American intelligence operatives, British intelligence operatives, and German extraction Nazi intelligence operatives. So this is a network very similar to the networks of the interwar period, such as the Room, which gave birth to the Office of Strategic Services, and the Link, which gave birth to various networks of cross-pollinated American, British, and German Nazi intelligence structures. Indeed, these are all networks worthy of reference when analyzing Department S-34. Indeed, Department S-34 seems to be a continuation, very much so, of these networks, and is engaged in corporate, industrial, and overall espionage. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. They also have networks of psychic warfare specialists of Russian extraction working for them. So it's interesting to consider indeed. There are various psychic warfare specialists of Russian extraction working for Department S-34 who have been recruited due to Vlasovite tendencies. So it's interesting to consider these psychic warfare specialists are distinct from the paranoid schizophrenic super spies who would naturally be anti-Nazi. Indeed, these psychic warfare specialists are of the Vlasov organization and are resident not only in Buckingham, but also in Russia, where they communicate psychically with one another as part of this ongoing engagement between the West and the Soviets. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, I just need to go for a wee. While I was addicted to synthetic cannabinoids, i.e., spice, and synthetic crack, which was a strange formula, at Grenville Lodge, I experienced a lot of strange paranormal phenomena. And indeed, at times I thought that I was finding the answer to everything. And indeed, at one point, I started trying to convince the professors, who I didn't know at the time were part of Department S-34. I started trying to convince the professors that I had found a new way of thinking in my brain that could be utilized for the betterment of humanity. Indeed, the professors of Department S-34 dismissed this as grandiose lunacy. Indeed, I retaliated by going into the local pubs, getting up on tables, gesturing everyone to listen to me, and stating that the professors were sacrificing people under the buildings and transferring their souls into the vessels of cats. Indeed, it's interesting to note that at the time I was so off my head, I didn't know what was real or what was not, but it turns out that this situation was real. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the synthetic narcotics had really heightened my extrasensory perception. Indeed, as a synthetic crackhead, I did begin to learn rather a lot about the Freemasonic networks and the Grenville Lodge Institute. And I put these theories of mine onto various forums of Eastern European origin. This was when Department S-34 decided to shut me down, basically wiped my brain and removed all of the information that I had posted on these forums in totality from the internet. So it's all very interesting to note that there may be Eastern European based schizophrenics who are aware of the Grenville Lodge Enigma, as I term it, and would still have the information that I was putting out about Grenville Lodge in 2012 and 2013. Indeed, I'm still being utilized as an experimental test subject by Grenville Lodge now. However, at the moment I fall in the jurisdiction of the Roundway experiment still due to my location in Wiltshire. However, these are interlinked entities, the Grenville Lodge Institute and the Roundway experiment. So it's interesting to note these are interlinking entities whose networks are intercrossed with one another. Indeed, they share programmers. Indeed, Department S-34 of Grenville Lodge, the Grenville Lodge Institute, may actually be the overseeing body of the Roundway experiment. Now, I need to go deeper into Department S-34. Are they actually employed by the British government? I do not know. It seems more likely that they are a private intelligence network distinct from MI5 and MI6. However, there is cross-pollination between these networks. And indeed, it's all very strange to consider what is going on here. Indeed, as I stated before, the students at Grenville Lodge began to avoid me because they believed I was undergoing a personality transplant. Indeed, I was beginning to change due to the effects of synthetic narcotics on my brain. And indeed, I have theorized that I'm not solely schizophrenic and possessive of schizotypy, but also that I have a degenerative brain condition caused by marked abuse of synthetic narcotics, especially the fact that I was bong hitting these synthetic narcotics and the damage that would have done to my frontal lobe and my brain overall. It's very probable that I have a severe degenerative brain condition that has basically been overtaking me since 2012-2013 time. Indeed, I've been walking around as a synthetic nutter. Basically, my brain completely changed and I basically lost connection with who I was before the age of 22. So it's interesting to consider this. I can't really remember my life that well before the age of 22. However, I am not ungrateful for this because, as I've stated before my time at Grenville Lodge, I was a typical moron brought up on British pop culture. So it's interesting to consider. Indeed, Eastern European schizophrenics have been observing me for years and noted that there are several people in Russia with the same degenerative brain condition who are attempting to expose GRU operations that connect to Department S-34. However, they are unaware of what is the overarching body of this network, and indeed, it seems to be Asylum Keepers Guild alienists and psychiatrists who handle the operations of Department S-34. So it's interesting to consider, indeed, a lot of the focus of Department S-34 is on human testing and human mind control experimentation. Indeed, these are Nazi networks, as I've stated, so it's interesting to consider. However, these networks could not necessarily be considered National Socialist. Indeed, this is a new theory, basically, that they have. Indeed, everything now is post-Nazi, and indeed, these people don't necessarily have an ideology. They simply want to conduct mind control experimentation in view of the creation of a cyborg class of elites who will be genetically and technically superior to the majority population. Therefore, they test on schizophrenics to work out how best to achieve the singularity for the elite classes, as I've delineated in a previous video. So it's all very, very strange and very interesting indeed. It's interesting how everything came down to a situation in devices where I established that there were links between Grenville Lodge, and the device's police headquarters. So it's all very interesting to note. Indeed, Department S-34 may be the overseeing body of the Roundway experiment, which would make all of this a rather interesting scenario. Indeed, the human mind control experimentation and testing at the Roundway experiment is directly interlinked with the human mind control experimentation and testing at the Grenville Lodge Institute. Indeed, I have had the misfortune to basically become a test subject in both of these programs, which are, despite Department S-34's being a private enterprise, these are part of the overarching Mindgate program of MI6, i.e. the British Secret Intelligence Service. So it's interesting to consider all of this. Indeed, Nazi spooks are everywhere in connection with this network, so still very interesting to note. And of course, these networks directly interlink with the National Association for Mental Health, which in Britain is now known as the National Institute for Mental Health, who are themselves overseen by the Asylum Keepers Guild. So all of my theories, and those of other paranoid schizophrenics here in Britain and in Eastern Europe, are beginning to add up to one controlling network, i.e. the Asylum Keepers Guild, the psychiatrists behind all of these dirty operations, and who were behind the Tiergartenstrasse 4 Nazi extermination of 93% of the paranoid schizophrenic population of the Third Reich, murdered in gas chambers, mobile gas vans, and by lethal injection. So it's interesting to consider all of this. And at the Asylum Keepers Guild oversee Department S-34, who are basically a right-wing private enterprise, so I use the term right-wing tentatively. However, the network operatives do seem to hold views that could be termed either reactionary or better termed techno-fascist. So it's interesting to consider. Indeed, these networks of Department S-34 are heavily involved in the creation of a police state structure in the United Kingdom. So naturally, they do not like the fact that I decided to expose Device's police after spying on them for a couple of years. Indeed, they know that they trained me in espionage, and those espionage capabilities are now being used against them, which annoys them even more. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, Department S-34 also connect to the organ harvest, i.e. the organ harvesting operations operating out of Walter Rose and Sons Butcher's Shop. And indeed, as a private enterprise, they can oversee these operations without government oversight. So it's interesting to consider that MI6 have outsourced the Walter Rose and Sons Butcher Shop organ harvesting cartel to Department S-34, which is very much a Nazi continuum intelligence operation. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, this would naturally link up to the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst and the old Galen organization. So it's interesting to consider this Department S-34 as a synthesis of Anglo-American old boy networks and die-hard Nazi spooks. So it's interesting to consider that this would directly intertwine with Project Moribund and the transferal of Nazi intelligence assets to the United Kingdom with the cessation of World War II hostilities, the UK equivalent of the US's Operation Paperclip. So it's interesting, the synthesis here. The Department S-34 are still analyzing me. I wish to utilize the Lighthouse network of Order of Nine Angles operatives, who they control in totality, to potentially bring me to Grenville Lodge. And the lighthouse there, indeed, there is a small lighthouse, despite the Grenville Lodge Institute being in the center of mainland Britain, there is a lighthouse looking construct there. So it's interesting to consider, indeed, the lighthouse, as with the lighthouse at the Green Lane Psychiatric Facility, the lighthouse is where the lobotomies take place. Indeed, this may be my final lobotomy, and I may no longer be employed as a schizophrenic super spy. I may simply become a vegetable, no longer operative at all, in any capacity. Indeed, my future depends on whether or not Department S-34 decide to lobotomize me or not. So it's all very, very strange to consider what is really going on here. Indeed, I believe that Department S-34 get furious about the fact that a paranoid schizophrenic synthetic crackhead can talk about them in such a way as I do. So it's all very strange to consider the fact that they are still studying me, and eventually they will close in on me, utilizing local police and a potential honey trap, and therefore end my exposures and destroy all the evidence in totality that I ever existed. However, this would be difficult. And indeed, they may resort to the Blackwell legacy. Indeed, I believe a lot of the programming that I've experienced, whereby I begin to believe I am a Russian agent, is due to alter layers implanted in me by Department S-34. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, their mind control programming techniques are highly developed, and their professors are very learned in the art of mind control. So it's all very interesting to consider what is the truth behind Department S-34 and their very cagey realities that they transmit to the students at Grenville Lodge and their test subjects. So it's all very strange to consider, and I'm going to leave it there now. Thank you.